Let me talk a little bit about something that you did that brought you to national fame and attention, and that's the Human Genome Project. What was the Human Genome Project, and why do we care about your having co-discovered it?
Well, good question. So what is the genome anyway? It's basically the entire instruction book, which is written in the language of DNA for an organism. So we humans have a genome, so do all other living organisms, animals, plants, bacteria, they all have a genome. Ours is pretty big. If you think of DNA as a language, it's an interesting one. It has just 4 letters in its alphabet, which we call A, C, G, and T because they're abbreviations for chemical bases. And our genomes are 6 billion of those letters. You get 3 billion from mom and 3 billion from dad. That's a lot, although it's pretty amazing to contemplate that that's a bounded set of information, and that seems to be sufficient to build a human being from a single cell. And when the Genome Project was started in 1990, we knew very little of that information. We had little snippets here and there of DNA information, but the whole thing loomed in front of us almost like an impossible task because our technology was nowhere near up to the ability to read that number of letters in any kind of measurable time.
So why is a person watching this or any human being better off because we now have mapped the human genome?
Well, there were many questions about that. The whole thing got finished in 2003, and there were some silly comments about, okay, medicine will be transformed in the next 2 weeks because of this. Of course not. 6 billion letters that you don't really know the language, it's going to take a while to figure it out. What's happened now over those last 14 years since then has, however, been transformative in medicine and particularly in cancer. Cancer now, if you develop that terrible disease, you want to know exactly what misspellings have happened in the genome of those cancer cells that are causing those good cells to go bad. And that is a transforming capability that's now affordable because of the Genome Project and pretty much has changed everything in terms of the way in which we approach the diagnosis and treatment of cancer.
Today, I think it's the case you can have, anybody can have their human genome mapped for, is it $1,000 or less?
It's even a little less now, yeah.
And have you had yours?
You know, I have not had the whole thing read out, but I had a sampling of it, gosh, 8 years ago. I was writing a book about personalized medicine, and I wanted to use myself as a guinea pig. And so, yeah, I learned some things in that process of doing that about my own future risks that I found useful. One thing I did learn was that my risk of diabetes was substantially higher than the average person based on my genetic inheritance, and that was sort of a shock because that's not something that's run in my family. But my family are all pretty lean, athletic people, so maybe they managed to avoid it. That was at a point where I was not lean and athletic. I was kind of indulging in too many muffins and honey buns and not doing any exercise, and I was getting chunky. And that was enough to motivate me 8 years ago to change all of that, to lose 35 pounds, to get an exercise program. I'm a different person now than I would have been if I'd stayed on that same path.
Well, muffins and honey buns are not healthy for you? Is that what you're saying?
They're not healthy for anybody, I'm afraid.